In 1815, as the chaotic thunder of the Battle of Waterloo echoed across Europe, the future of the entire British Empire hung by a single fragile thread. A victory for Napoleon would instantly bankrupt England, crashing its stock market to absolute zero. A victory for the Duke of Wellington would secure its place as a global superpower. Every wealthy aristocrat, politician, and merchant in London held their breath in a state of sheer panic. But while the British government waited in agonizing silence for its military couriers, one man sitting in the shadows of the London Stock Exchange already knew the final outcome, a full 24 hours before anyone else. His name was Nathan Rothschild. Oh, truly understand how a single family managed to outmaneuver the entire global financial ecosystem, we must erase everything we know about modern banking. We must travel back across the centuries, past the glass skyscrapers of Wall Street, and land in the year 1760. Our destination is a dark, suffocating, and heavily segregated alleyway in Frankfurt, Germany, known historically as the Judengasse. In this era, the Jewish population of Frankfurt was stripped of basic human rights. They were forbidden from owning land, locked behind heavy iron gates at night, and completely barred from entering public parks. It was within this environment of extreme oppression that a young man named Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born. Mayer did not inherit a massive fortune or a royal crown. He inherited a small, dimly lit shop that dealt in rare coins, antique metals, and basic currency exchange. But where others saw a dead-end survival job, Mayer saw a global chessboard. He possessed an almost supernatural genius for calculating financial risk and understanding human psychology. He realized that the wealthy elites and local princes of Europe faced a massive problem. They were constantly fighting wars, constantly running out of liquid cash, and constantly terrified of losing their physical gold to rival kingdoms. Mayer positioned himself as the ultimate trusted solution. He became the personal financial agent to Prince William of Hesse, one of the wealthiest rulers in Europe. But Mayer's vision was far larger than simply managing one prince's money. He knew that if his fortune stayed inside Frankfurt, a single local war or an angry king could seize it overnight. He needed a system that was completely immune to borders. And so, he looked at his 5 brilliant, fiercely loyal sons, Amschel, Salomon, Nathan, Kalman, and James. As they grew into manhood, Mayer sat them down in that dark Frankfurt alleyway and delivered his master blueprint. He commanded them to fracture the family business, pack their bags, and embed themselves into the 5 major financial heartbeats of the civilized world. Amschel would stay in Frankfurt, Salomon would go to Vienna, Nathan would conquer London, Kalman would take Naples, and James would establish their presence in Paris. As the 19th century dawned, Europe descended into utter chaos. The Napoleonic Wars tore the continent apart. Nation-states collapsed, borders were violently redrawn, and international trade was frozen. For ordinary merchants and governments, sending a critical message across Europe took weeks, and letters were routinely intercepted by enemy soldiers or greedy, corrupt politicians. But the Rothschild brothers did not rely on ordinary channels. To protect their financial intelligence, they built their own private elite postal service. This was a massive shadow network consisting of hyper-fast horses, secret maritime shipping routes, and deeply loyal couriers who moved faster than the official military mail of any empire. Every single piece of information, every market movement, and every political rumor was translated into a highly complex, completely unbreakable family code. If a courier was captured, the letter meant absolutely nothing to the enemy. This brings us back to Nathan Rothschild on that fateful morning of June 19, 1815. While the British state was entirely blind to the events at Waterloo, a Rothschild courier had already crossed the stormy English Channel on a specially chartered boat. A secret coded letter was placed directly into Nathan's hands 24 hours before the government's own official messengers arrived in London. Nathan held the ultimate secret. Napoleon had been decisively defeated. Wellington had won. The British economy was saved. But Nathan did not rush to buy stocks. He did something far more sinister, executing one of the most calculated financial deceptions in human history. He walked quietly onto the floor of the London Stock Exchange and took his usual position by a marble pillar. His face was a mask of cold, dark depression. With a subtle nod to his agents, Nathan began quietly selling his British stocks. The trading floor watched him in absolute silence. Then the whispers began to spread like a wildfire through dry brush. Rothschild is selling. Waterloo is lost. Napoleon is coming. Panic erupted. Wealthy investors desperately threw their papers into the air, selling their British holdings for whatever pennies they could get. Prices plummeted into a black hole of financial ruin. As the British stock market hit rock bottom and the wealth of generations vanished in a matter of minutes, Nathan gave a silent, prearranged signal to his hidden network of secret agents. Operating completely out of sight, they stepped forward and bought up the entire British stock market and the nation's sovereign debt for a fraction of its true worth. When the official military courier finally arrived in London the next day to announce the victory over Napoleon, the public rejoiced. But the wealth of the empire had already shifted hands. Nathan Rothschild didn't just win a simple market trade. He now effectively owned the debt of the British government. He had successfully achieved what no foreign army ever could, the financial capture of the British Empire. With England's wealth completely secured, his brother James in Paris and Salomon in Vienna turned their eyes toward the ultimate symbols of Old World authority, the royal crowns of Europe and the ancient institution of the Vatican. Default text: in the 19th century, political power was heavily shifting away from bloodlines and land, moving directly into the hands of those who controlled capital. The Catholic Church, despite its immense land holdings, was facing severe, crippling financial strain from decades of European wars and political turmoil. Seeing a flawless opportunity to expand the family empire, Salomon Rothschild quietly stepped into the shadows of Rome. He offered a loan so massive that the papacy had no choice but to accept, effectively making a Jewish banking family the primary financial lifeline of the Vatican. Simultaneously, the five brothers began a systematic campaign of financial leverage against the ancient ruling houses of Europe. They didn't use muskets or bayonets to conquer nations. They used interest rates and debt structures. When a king wanted to build an opulent palace or fund a new military campaign, the Rothschilds provided the gold, but every single coin came with heavy strings attached. If a nation failed to pay its debts, the family didn't seize borders. They seized control of national infrastructure, customs duties, state-owned railroads, and lucrative tobacco monopolies. Royal families across the continent suddenly realized that while they wore the crowns, the keys to their treasuries belonged entirely to five brothers from Frankfurt. By the mid-19th century, the family had achieved an unprecedented level of total financial immunity. They had successfully built an international network that sat entirely above the law of any single nation-state. But the changing landscape of global power was about to threaten their old world empire. In 1848, a massive wave of violent revolutions swept across Europe. Angry, starving mobs targeted the ruling aristocratic elites, and the prominent Rothschild banks were suddenly under direct physical threat. Palaces were raided, and centuries-old governments collapsed overnight. To survive this chaos, the family had to adapt. They needed a brand-new frontier, completely untouched by European political instability. That frontier was the United States of America. Across the Atlantic Ocean, a young, raw, and aggressive nation was rapidly expanding its borders. When the historic California gold rush erupted in 1849, the Rothschilds didn't pack up shovels to dig in the dirt. Instead, they used their massive capital to buy up the chemical refining companies that processed the gold and the major shipping lines that safely transported it. Through secret American agents like the powerful financier August Belmont, the family quietly funded both sides of the escalating political tensions in America. By controlling the flow of bullion and backing industrial infrastructure like railroads, they laid the invisible groundwork to dominate the upcoming American economic miracle. But America proved to be a far more brutal, unforgiving battlefield than old Europe. The rugged new continent gave rise to a completely new breed of self-made corporate tyrants. These are men who didn't care about old European bloodlines, royal titles, or secret family codes. These new American titans fought with raw, unbridled savagery for absolute monopolies. The historical stage was set for a massive, silent clash of titans. Old money from Europe was about to collide head-on with the cold, ruthless efficiency of America's first true industrial barons. By the turn of the 20th century, the Rothschilds executed their final, most brilliant defense mechanism, complete invisibility. They systematically fractured their empire into thousands of anonymous offshore trusts, shell corporations, and private family holding companies across Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. On paper, their empire completely vanished, ensuring they would never appear on a public Forbes billionaire list. They chose a path of absolute dominance, shielded by absolute silence. But while old European money mastered the art of shadows, a raw, aggressive force was rising across the Atlantic that preferred brutal public conquest. While the Rothschilds bought the debts of kings, a young assistant bookkeeper in Ohio was plotting to buy the earth itself. His name was John D. Rockefeller. He didn't care about European codes or secret postal networks. He wanted a total, crushing monopoly over the lifeblood of the modern world, oil, and the brutal tactics he used to destroy his rivals would change the global economy forever. To understand how Rockefeller built a fortune that rivaled empires, click on the video on your screen right now.